And we are live. It's taken me took me a little bit of time to get things together again today. But today I want to go in and talk about how do we simplify comp plans? How do we build comp plans that don't suck? How do we make it easy or simple for the people on our team to understand how their comp plan works, how they can optimize for compensation, make it clear inside our organization that the comp plan was designed with the organization's goals in mind and with the goals of the individual in mind. So let's start with just kind of a simple set of variables that are really important for us to understand before we get into a practical example. And I will show you a practical example. We'll work through how a comp plan for an account executive who has an OTE of 150K might work with a 600K quota as an example. So let's talk first about a couple things. What is OTE? OTE is your on target earnings. You'll see this in a lot of places. It'll be in job descriptions. It could be in your offer letter. It could be in discussions that you hear on a podcast, like the Find My Catalyst podcast. OTE stands for on target earnings. If you are interviewing for a role and the person you're talking to doesn't know what the OTE is, you're probably interviewing at the wrong company. They should understand that acronym. If you are interviewing somebody and they don't ask about what the OTE is or on target earnings, then you might be interviewing the wrong person. So OTE, on target earnings, that's what that stands for. The thing that makes up an OTE, on one side you have base. That is your base compensation. The money you make, even if you don't generate any money for the organization. This is your base salary. When you're bringing someone into an organization, it's important to have attractive base salaries because we all know the amount of that it takes time to build things like pipeline. Now, base is not what the person expects to be paid over the course of the year. It's a bit of insurance. It's provides some stability relative to the roller coaster that is sales rep compensation. So that's base compensation. On the other side of this T, you have variable. This is the amount of money that the person is the rep, account executive, account manager, customer success person, if they're responsible for revenue. This is what they get paid based on their performance. And typically it's based on a revenue number. It could be based on a bookings number. It could be based on a gross profit number. It could be based on a number of different numbers, but it should be very clear about what are the things that you're getting compensated on that contribute to you earning your variable. In a typical account executive role, you might have a 50-50 split. So 50% of the compensation is going to be on the base side, 50% will be on the variable side. In a typical account manager role, it might be closer to a 60-40 split. So AE, AM might be 60-40. Strategic account manager might be closer to 70-30. And someone in a customer success role might be somewhere closer to 80-20. The point is base plus variable equals 100%, which is your on-target earning. Your base plus variable should never exceed your on-target earning. If your base plus variable exceeds your on-target earning, it's no longer a target. They're starting to talk about OTE in the context of accelerators after you get past your quota. That is not a target. Again, on-target earnings, we need to understand what the quota is, the target is, and then the amount of compensation you get is based on hitting that target. The split or leverage is highly dependent on the type of role, the type of business you're operating in. So there are a number of dependencies, but the key here is this line, this horizontal line, can either go to the left or it can go to the right. And I guess I got to work on my left and right, but it can go either way. And on either side, someone is taking on a bit more risk. Company is taking on a bit more risk in one of these 80-20. Rep is taking on a bit more risk, or there's shared risk in one of these 50-50 instances. So we've talked about OTE, that's one variable. We've talked about base, that's a second variable. We talked about variable compensation, that's a third variable. The fourth variable that we get into is quota. So what is the target? What's the thing that impacts how we get compensated for variable? So that is our fourth variable. Once we understand each of these things, we can start to build comp plans that make sense. A fifth variable that's important that a lot of people miss on is what is the expected cost of sale from a rep compensation perspective. Now, do not want to get into the nuance of cost of goods sold or cost of sale or customer acquisition cost or some of these other things. Like, you can go through and watch 80 different podcasts around each of these SaaS metrics. You can download templates that will show you each of the definitions. In this instance, what I want to do is say, what is our target cost of sale based on sales rep compensation? What kind of spectrum do we want to operate in? In an early stage company, our cost of sale might be close to 50%. In a later stage company where someone's working in a large territory, the cost of sale relative to that rep might be closer to 2%. The thing is, we have to understand which variables we're working with. So are we working on team? Which roles are we working in? How much leverage do we have? So we've got OTE, on target earning, base, variable, quota, cost of sale. Once we know those things, we can actually start to get into comp plan design. This is why the relationship with the CFO or the controller or someone on the finance team is so important to you or we as sales leaders. Anybody who's building out these comp plans has to have a solid relationship with the CFO or the controller and the CEO, because if we will understand how do people who are responsible for the finance side of the business operate the business? What levers do we have to play with on that side? So on target earning, OTE, base, general compensation, what we get on a biweekly or monthly basis, variable, the thing that changes depending on how we perform, quota, the target we're shooting for, cost of sale, the spectrum that we want to operate the business within. All right. One more thing that's really important. When we're talking about quota, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, some are going to be paid on bookings. Some will be paid on revenue. Some will be paid on things like gross profit, profitability, margin. Know inside your organization, what are the things that contribute to quota relief or quota attainment? Very important question to ask. Don't go in there with assumptions around how you're going to get compensated or what you're getting compensated for, any of these things. So a couple of variables. This is pretty complex. This is why this stuff is really hard. This is why sometimes your comp plans are delivered inside your organization a couple of weeks after the year starts. Sometimes you don't know what those numbers are. Sometimes you've got to finalize the previous year before you know what the next year is going to look like. This really impacts strategic account managers and customer success, because we've got to make sure that we understand how much of the money is actually renewable inside their base, and then how much do we want them to grow. So give your leadership a little bit of leeway here from a timing perspective. Flipping to the other side, leaders, you know when comp plans are due. You have a sense on where you're going to perform the year. You probably have some general ideas of what your spectrum of performance is going to be. You can do a better job getting these comp plans out. You should not be in a situation where a comp plan is delivered any later than 1 month after the year starts. And my recommendation is that you should be in a position where you're actually delivering those comp plans within a week to 2 of that year starting. People should know how they're going to get paid before they get their next commission check. And a lot of times what we end up doing is we just roll over the same comp plan. And I've done it before, so I understand the challenge that happens here. All right. We're a little bit long for one of these podcasts, so I'm going to go even longer because I want to share a practical example. And this will show up in the Whiteboard Wednesday version of the video. So we laid out the different components: OTE, base, variable, quota, cost of sale targets. Now, Let's actually build a scenario out where we're working on an account executive role. We're going to keep things simple. Account executive role. We're going to have a 50-50 split between base and variable. So their OTE, number one, their OTE is 150K. We have a 50-50 split on their OTE. 75K base, 75K variable. Their quota is 600K. Quota is 600K. And the cost of sale that we're going to want to be in relative to the entire organization, actually for this specific role, let's say that it's going to be plus or minus 25%. And we'll work through it. And actually, I did some of the math over here because the first time I went and started doing this, I got lost in a little bit of my math. But let's say our cost of sale target is around 25%. That's specifically for the AE type role. Okay. That's specifically for the AE type role. The 150 fits in that. So we're good there. 150 is 20% of, or 25% of 600K. So we're good. We're good there. So that checks. Check. We're good on the quota. Check. We know what our OTE is, not FOTE. I forget who I heard. I think Amy Bolas is one of the first people who I heard talk about FOTE. I actually had a FOTE, the first first comp plan I got as a sales rep, which was absolutely phenomenal. And Mike, thank you for that. When we get into base and variable, we've got 75K that we need to split out, compensate on. We need to generate 75K in variable commission on that quota of 600K. So how do we turn 75K into 600K? Well, one way that we could do it is we could just pay a flat 12.5% across the board. I do not recommend that. I don't think that makes any sense. And here's the reason why. And actually my numbers might be off a little bit, but somebody in the YouTube universe can correct me here. But if we pay a flat 12.5%, there's really no incentive for that next dollar. So how do we modify that? How do we create tiers, structures of tiers? And what I like to do is break those tiers into 3 different components. I'm a big rule of 3 guy. So my first tier is going to be the first 50% of money. So that's the 300K. My next tier is going to be the next 25% of money. That's going to be the 150K. And then my next tier is going to be the next 25%, my next 150K. So what I can do is I can figure out how much variable do I pay at each of those tiers. And the first tier is going to be a bit smaller. So in this instance, let's use 11%. 11% paid out on 300,000 is going to be 33K. In the second tier, let's use 13%. We'll bump it up 2%. You earn a little bit more money on everything over 300K. So we're going to go there. The number that I came up earlier with was 19.5K. And then the third number that we're going to put out there, we're going to go ahead and take that up to 15%. So at 15%, we're now paying out 22.5 on that last 150K that's generated. So first 300K that's generated, sales rep's going to make 33 grand. Second 150K that they generate, they're going to make 19.5K. Next 25%, next 150K that they generate, they're going to make 22.5K. Okay. We add that up, that equals 75K. Check. So we've designed a plan that will pay out the variable at 100%. We're going to be within our 150K target. Now the next question is, what happens after 600K? This is where things get exciting. And this is where you want reps who are really hungry to go out there and solve for customer problems and optimize for generating revenue and really work with organizations who are the right fit, where we're going to have faster, smoother sales cycles, more predictable cycles, and they're going to blow through their number. And the reason you want them to blow through your number is because all of the math that we did on operating the business is based on hitting plan. When they exceed plan, you should incentivize them. You should reward them for doing an amazing job. And there are some studies out there that say that what is it, 23% of sales reps out there are making quota. I guess if I said 23.2%, it would sound more real. I think I saw something on Twitter today where somebody said 23%. But there's some the key challenges. We've made quotas really high. We have people who aren't attaining those, and then we have leaders who are getting fired. So lots of challenges. Right now, we're focusing on simplifying the comp plan. So we've hit on all of our numbers here. The next one, what I like to do is really bump up that last tier, that thing after 100%, those accelerators. This is the opportunity where a rep really gets a chance to earn. And I would go 20%. The reason I go 20% is 20% is still in line with our target of 25%. It operates within the spectrum of risk that we want to operate as a business. So our CFO is going to be really happy about this. We're only paying it on significant growth inside the business. And now every dollar that this rep generates, they're getting paid 20 cents on the dollar. So they are not going to hold on to deals toward the end of the year and put themselves in a position where they start the next year really strong. I'm one of those reps who had a lot of roller coaster years. I'd have years where everything would be great, and then I'd have a year where I came in at 80% of the number or 70% of the number. I lived to have another. I lived, I lived another day inside those roles, but I did really well when I was able to optimize for the comp plan after blowing through those targets and getting into those situations where we could go on a much bigger trip. We could, invest in something inside the house. We could do a couple of things that we were waiting to do. So I hope you got this. I hope this was helpful. This is in 16 minutes and 59 seconds, 17 minutes. I have given you what I know of and how I think when it comes to building comp plans. I actually have a download that you can go to where I lay all of this out in a Google Sheet. And if you want that, just send me a direct message wherever you're seeing this. It could be either via LinkedIn or Twitter, or find me in a number of the ways that you can find me. And the best way to go and find me is at findmycatalyst.com. Let me know if this helps simplify comp plans. Let me know what questions you have. You know what I missed on. Again, there's a couple of different variables that change for each of your business, but if you understand what the OT is, you know what the base is, you've determined the variable, you know what your how they're going to be leveraged, you know what their quota is, and you know how you want to operate the business. You can design a comp plan for any role and drive those behaviors that you're looking to drive, and also draw in the type of people that you're bringing in for each of these roles. If you notice, one of the things I did not get into is timing. These are annual quotas. You could do this for quarterly if you wanted to. I'm not a big fan of quarterly. I'm also not a big fan of monthly. I like to look at annual, but the reason I like that is because I'm extremely biased. I mean, I've been a high performing enterprise sales rep operating in an enterprise sales environment where sales cycles are much longer, and going in and doing things based on a quarterly quota and always being behind on a quarterly quota, that could be a bit frustrating, especially for someone like me. But I've got my own biases. I'm sure you have your own biases too. Thank you.